Welcome to Confessions of a Parent Coach. I'm Coach, a mother of four, and potty talker, Ann Kaplan. This is the podcast where I confess something from my own parenting and coaching life, teach a lesson around it, and answer your questions. Even we parenting experts are far from perfect, and the real magic happens when we get down with all that imperfection. We get into the gritty side of parenting here, so earbud up and dive in.
Well, welcome into another episode of the podcast, everybody. I'm excited to be here with you again today. And oh my gosh, this is the first time that I am recording a podcast after the holidays. So I hope everybody had an amazing holiday experience, even if you don't celebrate the holidays. I hope you had amazing, like maybe downtime or a few days off or whatever, and a fabulous start to 2025, all that great stuff. And I hope maybe you're feeling the way I am, which is like kind of a renewed energy about like diving back into life. And like, this is the most nerdiest thing you could possibly do on New Year's Day. But what I did on New Year's Day, I did all my accounting and bookkeeping for 2024. So that is the way that an Ania type one might decide to spend New Year's Day, just getting that great feeling of like responsibility and being on top of it, all that great stuff. That's what I did. So, whatever the thing is that gives you the feeling of being ready to just kind of grab life by the horns and do something and move forward, I hope that that is happening for you. Um, what I want to talk about today is emotions, which I've talked about in so many different ways over the years, and I'm sure I will continue to do into the future. What I want to talk about today in terms of emotions is this idea, and you probably saw it in the name of today's episode. Feelings are not facts. Feelings aren't facts. What does that even mean? And what's the point of saying that and all that stuff? Um, and the example I'm going to give you with to just kind of illustrate this and be my little confession for today is about my daughter, Gigi. You guys have heard me talk about her before, I'm sure. Um, Gigi is an Ania type 4. So that means that she has very intense emotions. People who don't understand fours can sometimes feel irritated with them or think of them as like drama queens or, you know, catastrophizers or, you know, attention hounds or whatever. And they absolutely do often behave that way. And by the way, I would say that there's like different chapters of life that really look like different points on the Enneagram, even if the person who's in that chapter of life isn't that point on the Enneagram. And I would say like teenager or middle school is a very fourish time, especially for girls. Obviously, that's a generalization, but in general, that seems to be true. So a lot of the things I say about Gigi might feel resonant for you. I don't want you to assume that your kid is a 4 because they sound like Gigi. A lot of teenagers, a lot of like 9 years old and older kids sound like a 4. So if you're curious about your Ania type or your kid's Ania type or whatever, remember that you can always reach out to me. I do Enneagram work and weave the Enneagram into my coaching and all of that stuff. But if all you want to know is what is my Ania type, we can do that too. Now that's a little bit of a sidebar. Um, so Gigi, Ania type 4, she feels feelings. She feels a lot of feelings. She feels those feelings very deeply and very intensely. And most of the time, when she's feeling her feelings, they are maybe exaggerated, or when she's expressing the feeling isn't what's exaggerated, but her storytelling and all of that stuff around the feeling is exaggerated. So it's just like, I didn't just have a bad day at school. I had the worst day of my life. Or like, I didn't just get into a fight with my friend. Like, I have no friends. It's very intense, very emotional. And for most of us, when our kids are saying these things that, frankly, are just patently false, and they're expressing these emotions that we can tell so easily from the outside, like we do not need to be so upset about. We want to put like some sort of perspective on it, like let's, everybody pump the brakes, right? We start arguing with feelings. But if you remember that feelings aren't facts, arguing with something that's not factual is really kind of dumb, actually. Like, you might be thinking that your kid is crazy or illogical for feeling the way that they're feeling, but you trying to argue with their feelings is just as illogical. So that is a mistake that I make. I'd say I'm batting maybe 50% with Gigi, remembering not to argue with her feelings versus falling into the trap of arguing with her feelings. But that is something that is so normal, and it's very useless. And you've heard me say in previous episodes where I talked about validation and things like that, what we really need to be doing when our kids express their emotions, even emotions we don't agree with and stuff like that, is to just validate them. And even it's kind of crazy for me to say emotions we don't agree with. How can you agree with an emotion? Like emotions just are. And the whole logical analysis thing that we do about like deciding if we're supposed to feel that way or if we should feel that way or if someone has a good reason to feel the way they do, it's so silly because feelings aren't facts. Feelings don't come from logic. Feelings don't come from analysis. Feelings don't come from our thinking emotional center. They come from our heart center or they come from our intuitive gut center. They are not they're not head centered or head originated things, but we try to fix them or argue with them using facts and using our heads. So if you can just literally remember nothing else from this episode except that feelings aren't facts, you're already ahead of the game. So I'm going to talk to you about a tool that I use with my clients, and I did not come up with this tool. I would give full credit to not me. The tool is called the self-coaching model, and Brooke Castillo is the coach who sort of codified the self-coaching model. But even she, if you read her book about the self-coaching model and stuff like that, even she will tell you like she created the self-coaching model by compiling all of this stuff that she got from lots and lots of different sources and all of her experience, doing her own personal work and her own personal research over the years. So Brooke Castillo kind of she took all of this stuff. She's the founder of the Life Coach School. I don't know why I'm talking about her so much because I wasn't even certified through her program or anything. But anyhow, she came up with the self-coaching model, and it was interesting to learn the self-coaching model when you have a background in therapy, because most people when they learn a self-coaching model recognize it as basically like the layman's version of cognitive behavioral therapy. The self-coaching model says that our circumstances are neutral. We are just whatever is happening, it's just happening. That is. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not wrong, it's not right, it doesn't mean anything. It just is. And then we have thoughts about that circumstance that we're looking at. And those thoughts, and when I say thoughts, we could also be talking about our beliefs or, our natural storytelling that's like kind of our default thinking or whatever. But our thoughts, our storytelling, our beliefs, that is what we do with that circumstance. That's what's going on in our brain. And that thought process, that storytelling is what creates emotion within us. And then emotions are what drive our actions, and our actions are what create the results that we experience in the world. So this probably might not be news to you, especially the whole actions are what create your results. We all focus on that part of the cycle all of the time. But what's really cool about the self-coaching model is you can do two things with it. And I would say this is true about all of the things that the self-coaching model is based on, like cognitive behavioral therapy, for example, is you can do two major things with this. You can use the self-coaching model to actually start to have awareness and understanding about what's going on in your mind and why you feel the way that you do and why your life looks the way that it does and why you keep getting the same results that you keep getting, all of that stuff. It's just a really great tool for understanding and self-awareness. But secondly, as you get better and better and better at using these ideas and actually start to kind of like integrate these principles, you can start to use the self-coaching model, actually change your thoughts, thereby changing your emotions and blah, 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 blah. And it's all based on the idea that feelings aren't facts. So when we're not really being conscious and aware, we're in a situation And we don't realize that we're telling ourselves a story about that situation, and that story is creating emotions. That first step where it goes circumstances create and then thoughts, and thoughts create feelings. That like first little piece of the model, it's very unconscious to most people, and even I would say people who are doing their work and maybe even are aware that this process exists, even we slip into unconsciousness around that process sometimes. So, understanding that feelings aren't facts is huge, because we don't realize that our thoughts are optional, and therefore the feelings that come from our thoughts are optional. We do think that whole situation is facts. You know, let's say, oh gosh, that the example I always give is about like the classic stuff where we're dealing as adult children, we're dealing with our parents and they're driving us crazy or whatever. But the example I want to use today is actually from my childhood. The this is a this is a circumstance that happened. It's a factual thing that happened in our family, and I'm going to tell you like two different ways of interpreting that situation, and the chain of feelings and actions and all that stuff that led from it, because to me it is such a great illustration of just, oh my gosh, so many things, but the self-coaching model for sure. So when I was a kid, my sisters and I, my family is all like very dark complected, dark hair, et cetera, et cetera. And I have two sisters. So the three of us as little girls were just like peas in a pod. And one of my sisters and I have very dark hair, very dark hair. And our middle sister has lighter hair. She just, I don't know why. She just, in my, this is my storytelling, but the luck of the draw, Claire got more like light brown hair that like she'll get blonde streaks in the summer and all of that stuff. That's just a fact. It's true. Ren and I have dark brown hair, and Claire has light brown hair that has the potential to get blonder in the sun. And when we were little, my mom would when we were in Florida, like visiting our grandma or whatever, whenever it was a sunny day, she would spray this stuff in Claire's hair called Sun In. And maybe if you guys are all the same age as I am, you remember this product, Sun In. But she would send Claire out into the sun with the Sun In her hair to play. So it would like help her hair get like all beautiful blonde and all of that stuff. Those are all facts. That's the circumstance. That is a thing that happened. My sister has the potential to have blonde hair. My mom put Sun in her hair. Though that's facts. That's the circumstance. And if you ascribe to this self-coaching model, you could say that's not good, it's not bad, doesn't mean anything, it's not wrong, it's not right. That's just what happened. It's just true. And if you listen to me and then listen to Claire tell that story, you will see how everything comes from thoughts. So, my thought when I would see Claire doing that was, Claire's so lucky. She has the most beautiful hair. Mom thinks that Claire is prettier than all the other kids. Mom cares what Claire looks like. She doesn't care what I look like. Mom really thinks Claire is special. Those are the thoughts that were going through my head. Claire's thoughts were, I don't want to be outside by myself. All of my sisters get to be inside in the air conditioning. Why does mom single me out? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And what were the emotions that Claire and I felt about this circumstance? Well, I felt jealous and I felt like unloved. I felt jealous of Claire and I felt like not special. I felt insignificant. I felt, dismissed. I felt marginalized. I felt overlooked, et cetera, et cetera. What were Claire's feelings? She felt jealous that we were all inside and she didn't want to be outside in the sun. She felt singled out, right? Like all of these things. She's telling herself a story that creates all of these feelings in her. I'm creating my own story that's creating all of these feelings in me. And you can see how the whole thing just spirals from there. And we're going to, you know, have our own actions that we take. So maybe I had actions that I took as a child, like trying to get more attention, maybe attention seeking behavior, or being angry with my mom and pouting, or, whatever, all the actions that I could have taken because I was feeling all the ways that I felt. And Claire might have had, well, I'll show mom I'm going to sit in the shade, or, throwing a tantrum when she had to go outside, or sticking her hair in the swimming pool so that she rinsed off all the sun in. I have no idea what her actual actions are, but you can see all of this stuff, right? So when we can say, like, imagine that you are talking to someone who's having these feelings, and I'm not suggesting you do this with your, four-ish child when they're in the midst of their emotions. But when we can have the idea, just for ourselves, even not to say to somebody else with who's having big emotions, but when we are having big emotions, or after we've had our big emotions, to say, okay, well, I know that feelings aren't facts, that my feelings come from my thoughts. My feelings come from the way I see the world, the stories that I'm telling myself. What am I telling myself right now? What are my thoughts? What is my story that is creating this emotion inside of me? And all of a sudden, this thing that feels like it just happens to us and we can't do anything about it, and we're sort of like a slave to the circumstances that we're in and the way that we feel about the circumstances we're in, it starts to dissolve. Like, we start to pull at that little thread that starts to unravel this sweater of, like, oh, right, like, actually, this process can become very empowering. Actually, I am in control. Actually, I do have the potential to change the situation. Actually, the outcome of the situation isn't predetermined, right? Like, if I had not, been rude to my mom because I was jealous and angry with her, or if I had, you know, you know, not decided to be jealous of Claire, so maybe be mean to her later on when she came back in the house or whatever. Like, all of those things were choices that I made. And those choices didn't actually happen when I chose to do the behavior. They happened when I chose to believe what I believed. Now, children, breaking this all down in nuts and bolts like this with kids, it's not exactly developmentally appropriate. The reason why I'm telling you all about the self-coaching model is not to teach you how to talk your children out of their feelings. We've already established that that is a bad decision, and it's not good, and it doesn't work, and it doesn't help kids. The reason I'm telling you about this is so that you can work on your own work. Because working with me, and if anyone out there is listening is working with me, you already know this. Like, 90% of the work that we do to become better parents is work to become better us, ourselves. In order to me to be a good parent to my kids, I have to be a good me first. And the only way I can do that is to do my own personal work. And the self coaching model is very powerful. And now, when you're using the self coaching model, you can actually literally write down on your piece of paper CTFAR, circumstance, thought, feeling, action, result. And you can literally fill in the blanks. Okay, what is my circumstance? I got a ticket. I got rear ended. My kid spilled shaving cream all over the bathroom floor. Whatever it is, that's a thing that happened. What do I think about it? Oh, my kid doesn't respect me. My kids never listen. My kids are so careless. I'm out of control. My house is out of control. I shouldn't have done this thing that made it so that I wasn't paying attention when my kid was playing with shaving cream. Like, whatever it is, all of those thoughts that we have, what feelings do I feel when that happens? Well, I feel like a failure. I feel ashamed of myself. I feel angry. I feel disrespect. I feel, frustrated. I feel et cetera, et cetera. Oh my gosh. Well, what do I do? Like, how do I act when I feel that way? Oh, well, I lash out at my kid. I get really reactive in my discipline. I get defensive because I'm trying to deal with the fact that I feel so ashamed of my parenting or whatever. What results do I create when I act that way? Well, first of all, that's not great parenting. So I'm probably creating continued misbehavior in the future, creating bad vibes between me and my kid. I have the result of just wanting to be alone and away from the rest of my family and just sit in my grouchy mood and perseverate on how crappy I feel, all of these things. And this situation where it's like, well, my kid, I'll have a conversation with my clients where I'm like, well, what happened? What are we talking about today? Oh, my kid just threw, sprayed shaving cream all over the bathroom. And so of course I lost my temper. And it's like, I'll ask them, like, let's break this down, like, well, what about that made you lose your temper? And for often there's a pause where they kind of look at me like, I just told you they sprayed shaving cream all over the bathroom. That's why I lost my temper. Like, it's a fact. Being angry about this thing that my kid did is a fact. It's not a fact. Your feelings aren't facts. This belief that you have that your kid's being disrespectful and doing this to hurt you, or you're taking it personally, or all of that stuff, then none of that is factual. It's optional. You get to decide the story you tell yourself about the shaving cream. And you get to decide how you feel when you see that shaving cream all over your bathroom, and you get to decide how you respond. But what we do oftentimes is we focus on the A line in the self coaching model. Stop yelling. Don't you lose your temper. That's one of the A things I said, right? One of the actions I said was losing my temper and yelling at my kid. Stop doing that. That's bad. So you're not allowed to yell at your kid anymore because it's not okay. And I'm going to just focus on that A line, the action, and almost pretend that I don't know that my actions come from somewhere. The real bottom line is if you truly want to change your behavior, if you want to change what's happening on that actions line of the self-coaching model, the things that lead up to that action line have to change. And furthermore, if you don't change them, your actions aren't going to change. You will continue to lose your temper. And no amount of forcing yourself or disallowing yourself or refusing to permit yourself to lose your temper is going to stop you from losing your temper. You need to look backwards and say, okay, well, why did I lose my temper? Well, I was furious. Okay, why was I furious? Well, because I thought that it meant that my child didn't listen to me and I was being ignored and he's really disrespectful and I'm out of control and blah, 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 blah. Well, no wonder you lost your temper, which is another great thing that the self coaching model helps us do. Have some compassion for yourself. For goodness sakes, who could blame you for losing your temper if that's the story you're telling yourself in your head? Like, yikes. And then you can start to say, like, well, what's another way to interpret this situation that leads to a whole different emotional constellation and set of behaviors? And of course, there are a million ways to interpret that situation, not just my kid's disrespectful and never listens to me. So, the self coaching model is an amazing tool. Beyond you learning that tool from this podcast episode, because let's face it, it's a complex tool. It's something that I work with my clients on, regularly over months, etc. What's most important for you to take away from today's episode is this idea that our behavior comes from somewhere, that our behavior is changeable, and that all change starts with our personal growth work. It all starts with exploring those thoughts and beliefs that we're bringing to our parenting and the emotions that come from that. So, feelings aren't facts. So, stop arguing with your feelings, stop arguing with your behavior, and start getting curious about where all that stuff is coming from. And that's why coaching is so powerful, right? Like, you could just read a book that says don't yell at your kids, and I'm sure you have. And yet still, here we are. Sometimes we still yell at our kids, right? Coaching looks at the what is behind this. Where is this coming from? Let's actually look at what's getting in your way. What is sabotaging you? Let's remove those blocks and see what amazing parenting we have just unlocked. It's so much less about learning new skills and so much more about removing the obstacles that make those skills unavailable to us. And 99% of the time, the things that make those skills unavailable to us isn't a lack of knowing, it's a lack of access, like literally emotional, psychological, nervous system access. And that is the self coaching model. And if you work with a therapist who does cognitive behavioral therapy, you're going to be doing this like with somebody, who is challenging you and saying, well, how true is it really? How true is it that your kids don't respect you? How true is it that you're out of control? How true is it What might be equally true? What also feels true to you, but leads to a different emotion? These are the kind of questions that I ask my clients. These are the kind of questions that I teach my clients to ask themselves so that they can use it. It's called the self-coaching model, right? So eventually, ideally, we're able to do this with ourselves and just be on to ourselves. Has some healthy skepticism with whatever your default story is that you tell yourself about a situation. Like, these are the things that come from coaching that we can't get from just taking a parenting class or reading a parenting book or whatever, or even listening to a parenting podcast. Let's be honest, right? So if you're ready to actually do that deeper work, that is when it might be time for you to talk to someone like me, or not just someone like me, but like me. Like, you could talk to me. How would that be? How cool would that be? I think it would be really, really cool to talk to you. And so if that feels cool to you too, I encourage you to use the link in the video description to set up a consultation with me. And we can talk about all of this stuff. We can talk about the shaving cream. We can talk about what to do differently with the shaving cream. We can talk about exactly why you aren't doing that different thing with the shaving cream and what needs to happen so that you do that different thing with the shaving cream. All of that stuff is what we talk about in a consultation. And it's really actually pretty powerful to see what shifts can happen even just after having that free talk. So set that up. I can't wait to talk to you again next week. And remember, feelings aren't facts. Bye, everybody.
The episode is over, but there's more waiting for you. You can grab my free workbook, Getting Kids to Listen the First Time, that walks you through the fundamental principles I teach all of my clients and applies them to this very universal parenting challenge. So if you're sick of repeating yourself all day long or just want to learn more about my style, you'll definitely want to go to bit.ly/kidswholisten. And if you're ready to work with me, let's meet. Set up a free call at bit.ly/Kaplan call, and let's create an action plan that gets you exactly where you want to go. And of course, links to all this goodness are in the show notes. Thanks for joining, and I'll see you next time.